unfortunately, to Alex's cost, on Saturday, Donington had to sit out the Sunday.
Over the course of the weekend, you have to say that there's a Top Rack effect in that, isn't there? Because Alex is pushing as hard as he can to stay in front of Top Rack. Obviously, in race 2, Sam has a crash trying to go with Top Rack, and that's the extent of the man. You know, it's so difficult to break the top 2 because Razgatlioglu and Bulliger all season long have been there.
Sam's one was very interesting, actually, because he was with the hard tyre, and for Top Rack, he was with the soft tyre. He assumed that he was on the same tyre as Top Rack, and the Top Rack's times were just so impressive. But it was actually where you've got that little bit of a tyre differential as well, and that's a little bit of inexperience on Sam's part for being at the front. But the Top Rack factor is real. Everyone knows that if you're going to have a chance to go with him, you've got to be right on it.
A lot of talk about this man this weekend, Danilo Petrucci. He's 3rd in the World Championship standings and more than heavily linked with BMW for next season, which would seem to make sense potentially for both parties. Factory rides is going to elude him at Ducati, so an opportunity there to make a move, and an opportunity in contractual terms, and obviously for BMW to get the best performing rider in the championship available at present. Razgatlioglu obviously off to MotoGP, Nicolo Bulliger staying put, so that seems like a potential match made in heaven.
Yeah, I think that if you're BMW, you look down the championship and you see the guy that's available is 3rd, and you're able to go and hire him. He's a big name, he's a MotoGP race winner, he brings a big following and a lot of attention. He fits all the bills for what you need. If you're Danilo Petrucci, the only thing that isn't being filled is a 2-year contract. It is only going to be a 1-year deal for him, but by the time we come back for FP2, you wouldn't be surprised if that's signed, sealed and announced. But certainly over the course of this weekend, the expectation around the paddock is that it will be announced. And for him, it's one of those situations where he can go and get paid. And he's at the stage of his career where that becomes very important. And for Petrucci, it's the chance to be on a factory bike, a good bike as well. And we'll see if he's able to get more out of that than what some of the other BMW riders have been able to do in the past.
Midway through this 2025 campaign, and we've got a change here and now for this weekend. We largely anticipated Scott Redding's departure, and we said so at the start of the weekend in Donington Park after a decent outing for him in the British Championship. He's now made that move permanent, and it's Taz McKenzie who comes in to replace him at Bonovo. Obviously sat out 1 round after his departure from MIE Honda, but what an opportunity this is for McKenzie to get up onto a performing bike and have a real opportunity now to challenge at the sharp end of the grid and really measure himself, because there's so many Ducatis obviously as a point of direct comparison.
Yeah, I spoke to Taz a little bit yesterday, and he just looked so relaxed and happy, and very different to what we saw from him the last 2.5 years in the MIE Honda, whether in the Super Sport class or in the Superbike class. He now has an opportunity to come in this weekend, be on a good bike, and see what he can do. And when you look at Scott Redding's performances over the last, say, 5 rounds, he was qualified on the 5th or 6th row of the grid for almost all of those races. If Taz is able to come in and give himself a chance to be on those front 5 rows of the grid, he's gone in and he's done a decent job from the get-go, and that'll give the team a bit of encouragement as well.
As you saw, Remy Gardner announced on a 2-year extension, so he will remain with GRT next season, obviously on a continued Yamaha contract. Good news for Remy Gardner, who's been able to knock on the door on occasions this season, certainly with his podium finish in Assen, again after his Dutch Round podium last year, and then top 5 finish in Most as well. The promise is there, it's about that package moving forward, and good to hear the comments from Nicolo Canepa in that announcement about what Gardner brings to the table in terms of feedback and in terms of his work with the engineers.
Yeah, for Remy, I think we've been able to see that he's made a big step forward over the course of this year in terms of just his maturity on the bike and in the garage and how he deals with the team, because there was a time whenever we saw him throw his gloves around a lot and sound off about the bike. That seems to have taken a step back now in recent months, and he's understood that he's got a decent package there. Locatelli's doing a good job, and it's up to him now to be able to step it up and try and be that leader for Yamaha as well.
Free practice 1, and your first reference points in terms of lap times. So the club racing event with a Dunlop Cup and Yamaha R7 Cup 5 weeks ago. There were several Superbike riders appearing in that one on stock bikes, and the fastest lap was a 1:44. The MotoGP test, 26th of June. There were 8 World SBK riders in that one, again on stock bikes as well as the GP bikes. Fastest in that one was a 1:39.5. So first lap times coming in here in free practice 1, and at the moment it's Sam Lowes who is fastest on a 1:42.647. But again, he's 7/10 of a second up at the halfway mark on this latest lap, and we pick up Sam now. Just getting a little bit of traffic with Michael Ruben Rinaldi, so that might cost him a little bit of lap time in the second half, but there is still more time to find, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. You can see Lowes just making his way around here. That looks to get down at turn 14, down in towards the last of the chicanes now. And speaking to a lot of the riders yesterday, went out, did the track walk, and everyone was looking at the patches of asphalt that have been laid down, and a lot of it's only relatively recent in the last couple of weeks, so it hasn't quite had as much time as you'd want for it to cure and to set. But obviously with MotoGP coming here in a month's time, that'll be when it should be fine for those riders. The Superbike riders have said that when they tested here, they were actually pretty impressed by the place. The track is what the track is. It's not a layout that is going to inspire an awful lot of the Superbike riders. They want fast corners, they want that type of challenge. It's very much a top rack style track with the heavy braking zones and slower corners. But a little bit like when we first went to Cremona, everyone looked at the layout and didn't know what to expect. Everyone here for the Superbike class has said pretty similar for this round, and they like that there's a little bit of variety in the championship. You come somewhere like this, you come to Cremona, you go to Most, all very different places for the newer circuits on the calendar, and then we get to go to the classic tracks like Phillip Island or Donington and Assen, and we've got good variety across the championship. So everyone seems to be pretty open to what we have here in Hungary.
Yes, I think that's all fair enough. It's not going to be the fastest track. We've not got high-speed corners. We've not got the undulation. But we have got a very efficient layout. We have got enough hard braking zones that we'll have plenty of overtaking. Comments from Danilo Petrucci you can see here in front of Top Rack Razgatlioglu saying, well, look, we're going to be able to pass one another. So the action's going to be good for spectators and for the viewers at home. And frankly, that's the first priority, even beyond what some of the riders think about their enjoyment on the bike. We want to see the dicing and the battles on the circuit.
Yeah, exactly. And you want to be able to see it where everyone on different bikes has different places where their bike works well. And that's where this, in theory, should be one of those places where the Honda should be a little bit more competitive, because it's pretty good in the heavier braking zones compared to some of the other bikes. So it should be one of those tracks that helps them a little bit, where Donington didn't play to their strengths. But obviously at the recent test, they were quite critical of the place. So we'll wait and see, once we get into the race weekend, how the Honda feels on a full Superbike here and how Iker Lecuona and Javi Vierge get on.
Yes, as you say, the worst of weekends as far as Honda are concerned last time out, and actually coming to a completely different type of venue, if anything, ought to fare them well, because the high-speed corners in the first half of the lap at Donington Park did not seem to suit them, and it was a miserable weekend all round with only a handful of points on the board. Just a quick note, Top Rack Razgatlioglu now into the 1:40, so 1:40.913 for Razgatlioglu. That's 0.8 of a second faster than anyone else, and the pace continuing to tumble. We have seen before when we visited tracks for the first time, Top Rack is very often among the first to really get up and running at speed.
Yeah, I was speaking to a few riders about when they came here for their track days, and the MotoGP riders for the test as well, and they all said the same thing. It takes 4 or 5 laps to really get up to speed around here. Not a particularly complicated track to be able to understand from the early stages of a free practice session, but then to unlock that extra potential takes a little bit more time. And even speaking to Roger Burnett yesterday, of course, Roger, the first ever pole setter in World SBK as we move in towards the 1,000th race in the championship's history. And Roger saying that a track like this, it's all about being patient into the chicanes. You can obviously make up a lot of time by running into the chicanes hard, but if you break it a little bit too late, you cost yourself the entire lap. So this is a track where patience is going to pay off as well.
At the end of his first stint on the circuit, but we're just heading up towards the 10-minute mark, and it's Razgatlioglu who leads the way ahead of Lecuona, Petrucci, Sam Lowes and Jari Montella. Inevitably, a lot of talk about what Ducati's lineup is going to look like next season, and that really is the next piece of the puzzle as far as the rider market for 2026. The news already that Alvaro Bautista won't continue on the second Aruba bike makes that available, and that obviously is attractive not only to riders in the World SBK paddock, but from outside in the Grand Prix paddock as well, to move to the best team, the most successful manufacturer, and so on. And then what the independent bikes will look like. Obviously Sam Lowes already confirmed, but with Danilo Petrucci's anticipated move, that opens up another very competitive bike that's currently third in the World Championship. So yeah, effectively the bikes third and fourth in the World Championship at present are up for grabs for next season.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those situations where for the teams and the riders, it's definitely a rider's market in some ways, but it's about trying to be able to put yourself into that right position. Ducati has the best bike on the grid, so there's a lot of riders available to move on to that Bautista seat, but the budget isn't quite there, so it's backing yourself for a longer run, and that's why someone like Petrucci was more interested to go to BMW, because he needs to be able to bank at this stage of his career, and he can still be on a competitive bike. For the Aruba seat, it'll be a situation of which of the Moto2 riders wants to take that chance. I'd be very surprised if it is Aaron Canepa.
Free practice 1, we've just passed the 10-minute mark with Razgatlioglu leading the way ahead of Sam Lowes, Danilo Petrucci, Nicolo Canepa, and now Alvaro Bautista. Anthony Nelson down in pit lane. What have you got for us?
I'm here with Nicolo Canepa, sporting manager for Yamaha Motor Europe. And Nicolo, yesterday the big announcement that Remy Gardner will be continuing another 2 years with the GRT Yamaha team and signed as a Yamaha rider. Talk us a bit through it.
Yeah, we're really happy to continue with Remy. It's a great rider, and since he joined the Yamaha, he kept improving. So we're really happy that he can do another step for the next 2 years. And good for the team, for GRT, good for Yamaha. So looking forward to continue with him.
That's 2 riders now that Yamaha have signed to 2-year contracts, and 2 riders who had already been with manufacturer for a few years. It shows a bit the trust and the stability that Yamaha seems to be looking at this current point in time.
Yeah, for sure. For us, it's important to give opportunity and to give stability to our riders and teams. And I think it was normal to announce and continue with Locatelli after the great result that he's doing, and same with Remy. So we're really happy about that, and we want to continue this way.
Still 2 bikes, let's say, on the factory bikes for Yamaha going into 2026. With that stability, for the 2 riders who've signed already, it seems like the rumours are pointing towards a look into the Super Sport class, and they've been quite vocal as well about potentially wanting those opportunities. Is that the main focus at the minute?
Yeah, well, we still didn't take a decision for the other 2 bikes, but yeah, what is sure that for Yamaha it's very important. All this program that we are doing with the Blue Crew, starting from the R3 Blue Crew World Cup, Super Sport 300, to step up our young talents to achieve World Superbike at some point. So this is for sure something that we're looking at, but we still didn't take any decision for the next year.
It does create somewhat of a headache, a welcome headache, let's say, though, to have 2 competitive riders in the Super Sport class who are looking at that, and who you imagine other manufacturers will also be having a look at it.
Yeah, well, I believe that the headache comes when you have no one competitive in that class. Luckily, the R9 is performing very well. We have many riders fighting for the podiums, not just 2. So this is very positive for Yamaha, for our project. So makes our life a bit easier to have many fast riders.
Just to close off, is there any sort of deadline that you've put for that final decision?
Not really, no.
Well, thank you for your time and enjoy the free practice on.
Thank you very much.
So, first stint completed then in free practice 1. Toprak Razgatlioglu has made his way back in. Sam Lowes as well. Petrucci, Quoda, we already mentioned, Alex Lowes and Andrea Locatelli. And, first chance really for the riders to make discussions with their crew chiefs and work out where they can find more time in the second stint, and then carry some momentum through the weekend, as we see in classic Toprak Razgatlioglu style under heavy braking.
Yeah, Toprak was just talking to Phil there about the electronics and the feeling of free as he enters into the corner. So for him, he's just trying to correlate out how the base package feels everywhere else compared to here, and then the real work for the teams will come from free practice 1 into free practice 2. We'll see if we can listen to Sam as well. And Sam just pointing out to turns 2, 3 and 4 in the opening sector and saying that it feels okay. So again, just trying to give his crew chief a little bit of feedback. There's not that much that can really be changed during the course of a free practice 1 session. You can't turn the bike upside down. You have to just try and make small changes, but it's about trying to give yourself that small change to then see how it feels out there. The biggest challenge, of course, is the more rubber goes down, the more the track changes, the more it evolves. But the one thing for this weekend is it's going to be so hot when it's good weather, and we've already got 40 degrees track temperature here at 10:30 in the morning. The challenge is going to be what happens for the weather over the course of the weekend. Today and tomorrow looks very good. Sunday looks unsettled. There's a front coming in and a lot of rain next week here in Hungary, so it looks like that's just starting to come in on Sunday. So we could easily have it where on Sunday we have some rain and a very different set of challenges.
Yes. storm's coming. And I was like, what? It's so hot out there, you wouldn't believe it. But hey, that could add some extra spice to an already fascinating weekend. Plenty going on, a new circuit, the 1000th race, and all of the movement around that. And if we get some mixed weather as well, that's only going to add some further drama as we make our way through free practice 1, just the start of an already very busy weekend. Good to see Garrett Gerloff here up in the top 10 positions in the early stages of free practice 1. What a great weekend it was for Gerloff last time out at the UK round. 3 top 8 finishes, and obviously finishing the weekend on a high with a 6th place. That's his best yet on Kawasaki machinery. And good weekend as well for Ryan Vickers. They're riding line astern on the circuit at the moment. Vickers with a 7th place in the Super Pole session. Couldn't quite get the bike then up into the top 10 places during the 3 races, but still scoring rides in race 1 and race 2. Certainly the most promise we've seen from him as yet. So a few riders hoping to carry some momentum over from Donington Park, because we're talking about 2 very different types of circuits.
Yeah, exactly. And for the likes of Gerloff, it's going to be interesting to see how he plays into the second half of the season. We know that there's some circuits coming up that he always goes particularly well at. If you look at Magny Corway, of course, had a pole position for the Bonovo team. When you look at Aragon, Estoril, he can have really good performances there. Everybody knows Jerez like the back of their hand. That's where we do our winter testing. So again, another venue where riders can spring a bit of a surprise result. This is what we see from Garrett Gerloff, and there's some places where we'll go through the course of the season where you look at Gerloff and you think he's a real top-tier superbike rider, and then there's other circuits where he just hasn't been able to make it work for his style in the past. This year on the Kawasaki, I think he's been able to see that that bike and package is actually pretty good, and he's pushing Kawasaki to keep developing it as well, and not just leave it where it's the same bike that finished last season with Alex Lowe's and Axel Bassani. It's taken Gerloff a bit of time to adapt to the bike, like it did for Bassani last year, but Donington showed that he can make it work.
Yes, and the trend has been positive. It's not been up and down from one weekend to the next necessarily. It's been steady progress from one round to the next. So last few rounds, Gerloff has shown a little bit more promise. First top 10 in Most, and then obviously an 8th place in Misano, now the 6th place in Donington, so you feel it's going in the right direction, and clearly the team have already made the decision along with the manufacturer to extend into next season with Garrett Gerloff. So all looking up at the moment as far as Gerloff is concerned. As we see into the pit box for Sam Lowes, he's already confirmed for next season as well. For Sam, it was a bit of a bizarre weekend last time out at Donington Park, wasn't it? Because it was such a promising weekend with so much speed, where he was certainly a podium contender throughout, and possibly at one stage even a potential race winning contender. He comes away with a podium, and yet only a handful of points because the retirements in races 1 and 2. And you know, one of those completely not his fault at all. The first bend incident, 4 riders going 4 abreast into Redgate, and you know, 2 of them don't make it out. Obviously 3 of them don't make it out. So you know, just the race 2 retirement, and even then you're battling with Toprak, so you can be forgiven for that one too. Yeah,
it's one of those ones where for Sam, the incident happens behind him, and he gets Montella's bike through the back, and absolutely nothing you can do for that. Similar to the Bautista crash in Assen, where there's not a lot you can do for that. And for him, the race 2 crash is probably more similar to the crash that we saw in Portimao for him, where you're crashing, chasing down the chance to either win a race or finish on the podium. And teams can deal with a performance-related crash a lot easier than they can whenever it's a rider crashing from 12th, 13th, 14th position. So for Lowe's, Donington left him with a podium and probably a feeling of what might have been. But again, for the team, it was able to see progress again where they've made another step forward, and he'll have learned more in that 2.5 laps trying to chase Toprak than you can learn in 2.5 rounds in different times in your career.
Just want to go back to talk a little bit more about the rider market ahead of next season. This man, Dominic Egerton, being linked in the press this weekend to the Go 11 ride. Potential there that Andrea Iannone moves on, and obviously the likes of Alessandro Del Bianco already linked with that seat previously. Then at the other end of the scale in terms of experience, you know, the likes of Alvaro Bautista and Jonathan Ray. So that's one again that we have seen potential from the Go 11 bike, more so last season with Iannone than this, because it's been a tough 2025 for Andrea Iannone, but another of those Ducatis that will be in great demand in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah, and I think it does look like Del Bianco is still very much in play for that. I know that there's some reports that he might stay in the Italian Championship, but for Go 11, he's a rider that makes sense for them to be able to put onto that bike. He's backed by Pata as well, so the sponsor stays happy, the team get an Italian rider. If Domi Aguilar were to get on the bike, Domi could do a really good job in a Ducati, but for the team, maybe it's easier to put Del Bianco in there. Iannone looks like it's going to be very difficult to see where he lines up on the grid next year, unfortunately. He's a rider that brings a lot of good qualities to the championship, but the results haven't been there, and obviously the atmosphere has been really bad within the team this year as well, so that makes it difficult. And for the likes of Alvaro Bautista, he obviously wants to be still on a Ducati next year potentially, but will he want to be on an independent bike? It's a lot harder to see him on that bike than it is for someone like Del Bianco. And then for the Barney seat, it just looks like it'll be Jonathan Rea that's in the prime position for that. And at Donington, that was when there was first a little bit of a rumour about that. Obviously, it was all dependent on what Petrucci would do. But as long as Rea is willing to ride for the same rate Petrucci's been getting the last couple of years, he'll be the rider on the Barney bike.
And, you know, there's a lot of sense in that from both sides. You think about what's just happened in MotoGP over the last couple of seasons. Marc Marquez going to a satellite team, proving himself and coming back to dominate this season. Okay, maybe the situation, you know, being very different for Jonathan Rea and the age factor and so on. But you've got to believe that Rea on a Ducati is still a race winner, despite two very, very disappointing seasons with Yamaha.
Yeah, I've said it on the broadcast a lot through the course of this year. If Rea was still on the Kawasaki last year, what's his reputation? He'd retire in all likelihood because he'd view it that there wasn't anything else for him to prove. But he would have been able to finish probably third in the world last year. He would have won a few races. He would have had a lot of podiums, and everyone still thinks he's Jonathan Rea, Mr. 6 times world champion. As it is, you move to the Yamaha team. There's no two ways about it. It's been disastrous for both sides. You know, Yamaha didn't pay all that money for the results they've got. Rea didn't pay his way out of a Kawasaki contract for the results he's got. Sometimes it just doesn't work. And Jonathan Rea is still a super talent. He's still a 6 times world champion. He hasn't lost that ability. He just needs to go somewhere where he's able to let that ability shine through. And with the Yamaha, it's just not a bike that suits him. And it's really unfortunate because it's very clear that no stone has been left unturned by either Rea or Yamaha. They've had a crew chief change. They've done everything that they could have done to try and make the best of that situation. The only mistake that they could make now would be to continue that relationship on both sides. Because for Yamaha, it would be good money after bad. And for Jonathan Rea, it would be, is there really an opportunity for this to come good? And if Rea believes that there was, that would be where you're looking at it and you're saying you're clutching at straws. And that would be where it'd be very difficult to then see Rea on that bike again next season. I think if he's on the Ducati, if he's on the Barney bike, it's third in the championship. Petrucci's been able to win races on it last year. He won the 3 races in Cremona, but he's had a lot of podiums on it this year. That's a good opportunity for Jonathan Rea.
Yeah, because by the same token that you know, you'd say Jonathan Rea was beating Alex Lowes, and therefore if he'd continued at Kawasaki he would have been having those results last season. You'd have to say that if you put Jonathan Rea and Danilo Petrucci side by side on a superbike, you would expect Rea to come out on top. So if Rea could get even more out of the Barney bike than Petrucci, then frankly he's back to being a championship contender again.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's where you look at it and you think this, especially with the new 26 bike, it should be where that bike is even better, and it makes another step forward and becomes a little bit more of a regular superbike as well, because it won't have the single-sided swing arm. It should be a little bit grippier. It should work a little bit more to even like a style that Jonathan Rea needs. The Yamaha clearly doesn't suit his style. You need to carry the corner speed with it. That's the exact opposite of everything that Rea learned from his early days on a superbike. And it's not where Rea isn't adaptable, because he's shown time and again how adaptable he is during his career, but it just couldn't work with that bike for him. And for him, if he's able to jump onto an independent Ducati, he has a chance to win another race. And I think for Jonathan, that's all he wants, is to win one more race. But then he'll want to win one more. Again, it's always winning the next race.
Yeah, absolutely. Just saw Michael van der Mark in the BMW pit box. Obviously, most of the discussion has been around that first BMW seat and the link with Danilo Petrucci. Early stages of this season, the noises from BMW were along the lines of, well, expecting very little change. And actually, because of Razgatlioglu's departure, suddenly they've got to review everything, and that includes the second seat as well, because if you've got Top Rack, you don't mind very much, honestly, that Van der Mark is down in 15th in the championship or whatever. Okay, it's a tougher sell than last year in the top 10 for Van der Mark, But if you've got a rider leading the championship on his way to the title, you don't mind just having someone who works well with him, who has got that unity within the team and who's popular. But when there's a change, and Razgatlioglu moving on to MotoGP, then suddenly BMW have got to evaluate a second seat as well, think about bringing in someone who's going to be able to challenge for podium positions and make a bit of an impression. So certainly a lot of riders being courted at the moment by BMW, or at least preliminary discussions going on seemingly across the board, because I've heard more names linked with that than there are bikes in the whole championship.
Yeah, exactly, and it's such a tough time because there's so many good riders, and this is actually one of the things that we're going to see more and more in the future, because if you think back to 15 years ago, before we had all the talent cups, there was always, where are our riders coming from? Now they're all coming from the talent cups into Moto3, into Moto2, and then there's only a few Moto2 riders that are able to make the step to MotoGP. That might change now in the next couple of years, just because if Mark is out there dominating, is there any need to keep yourself hiring MotoGP riders that can't beat Marc Marquez, or do you need to then start taking more stabs in the dark to hunt down the next Mark in the Moto2 or Moto3 classes? But that means that those riders then have to find a superbike home as well, and that's where it becomes very difficult for a lot of riders trying to find their future. And Van der Mark's probably the best example of it. Mikey finished third in the world for Yamaha. He's won races on a Yamaha and on a BMW. He's had a pole position on a Honda. He's shown himself to be a really good rider in the Superbike Championship, but is he going to have a ride for next year? And that's where it becomes really difficult, because it's difficult to see where he fits in. And if you were Honda, you want to have an established Superbike rider where we're able to actually know what the level of the bike is. But if your choice is between having Alvaro Bautista or Michael Van der Mark on the bike, you're taking Bautista. So for Van der Mark, he needs to try and find out where he can actually be on the bike next year. And that's tough, because he's a world-class rider that last year finished 6th in the world, and was able to have a really good performance when the BMW was doing what he needed it to do. And you can see there for Balaton Park, the Yamaha not doing what he needs to do there as he gets the bike stopped into turn 15. But you then have that question mark about where do you go, and I know that Anthony, you're down with Sven Blusch there at the BMW box, and it's certainly the centre of attention now for what's happening in the rider market.
Exactly, Steve. Just before we get into that, I would like to ask Sven a little bit of a word about the feedback that the two riders have had so far. Toprak at the top of the time sheets immediately here. We can see both Toprak and Mikey have just gone out now from pit lane for their second run. So tell us just first a little bit about their feedback.
Yeah, I think it showed also at the beginning how good Toprak's performance is directly at the first laps. I think this shows also again his talent, how quickly he can adapt. Feedback was from both sides quite good, so I think we're looking into good free practice sessions. We have some changes we want to try. Also from Mikey's side, feedback was also quite positive. So yeah, I think from our side at the moment we're happy.
Sven, I must ask, of course, because the big rumours coming into this weekend, and especially yesterday, were about the interest for BMW in Danilo Petrucci, third in the World Championship. There were rumours of a meeting a few weeks back. I just want to ask you about that and a potential interest from BMW.
We are not talking about contracts at the moment, so hopefully in the next weeks we can announce something, but in particular we do not talk about things which are not signed.
Fair enough, but it must be said that going from the rider who's first in the World Championship, the rider in second has his contract sealed, the logical conclusion for a lot of teams would be in that situation to go for the rider in third.
To be honest, we look in all paddocks. I think I did this statement also about the last weeks. So we have a couple of riders in our minds, and the final decision, I think, in the summer break we will know more.
Well, we'll look forward to it. Thank you for your time, Sven.
Thank you.
On board here for a lap of the Balaton Park circuit, our first on-board lap with Toprak Razgatlioglu.
Down in towards turn 2, you can see how much you're staying on the side of the tyre through 3, down in towards 4. It's a technical racetrack. It's not a fast-flowing racetrack, but it suits Toprak style down to the ground. This is the run down in towards turn 5, and you can see we're back-to-back with the pit straight on our left-hand side. Down in towards 5, again, you can see for Toprak trying to get the bike stopped. A little bit of trail braking for Razgatlioglu as usual, down into 5 and into 6. This is where the track opens up a little bit through here for 7, and then you're in towards turn 8 and down in towards the bottom hairpin then as well. But for Razgatlioglu, you can see down in towards 9 and 10 now, the next of the change the direction left, right, and then down in towards the hairpin here at turn 10. And for Toprak, you can see and you can hear those short shoots on the gas that he's trying to have just to spin the bike up, put it into the right position. This is the most important corner of the track. It leads down towards one of the other overtaking opportunities down in towards turn 12 and 13. But you can see again for the riders, you're not really clicking up through the gears, but you will have opportunities to try and force moves through this section of the track. Through the left-hander, this is where you could easily burn up a little bit of your tyre through here in the course of the race as well, so the riders know that they have to be patient through that. Into 15 and 16 again, a right-left change direction, down in towards the last corner, turn 17. It's actually reminiscent of the last corner at Misano as well, and you can see the green paint on the outside there, but the riders haven't been running out onto that curb on the exit there. They've got enough space through that section of the track. Toprak there with a 40.4, so fastest lap of the day so far, but still 15 minutes left here in FP1.
Yeah, perfect time to ride on board with Toprak Razgatlioglu, as you say, fastest time so far, 1 minute 40.433 and 4/10 of a second faster than Sam Lowe's. But interesting just to see new surroundings here at the Balaton Park.
Always nice to ride on board for a new lap record as well.
Oh, Steve, in free practice 1. Yes, okay. I think we'll see a lot of lap records this weekend, don't you?
Quite a chance.
Alex Lowe's comes across the line. That'll be his new personal best at Balaton Park. 1 minute 41.252.
It's an interesting weekend for Bimota because for them, we saw in Donington that they were able to qualify well, and then you can have a good weekend. Qualifying dictates everything over the course of a race weekend for all of these riders in the Superbike class. And it's where for Lowe's we were able to see he was at the front of the field and he was able to show that he had the potential for really good results. A little bit like Axel Bassani and Misano as well. The Bimota's coming good, but it needs to qualify well. It still doesn't have that top speed. That won't be a big factor around here because the highest speeds we're going to see are 260, 270 k's an hour down the straights. And that means that it's not about your outright power, it's the punch out of the corners, which also comes from your drive grip out of the corners. That's where the Bimota is quite good.
Yes, as you say, there's no straight here, 700 metres or above. You know, it's a 600 metre start finish straight, and then the back straight off turn 4 is the next overtaking opportunity with the braking zone into turn 5. So, as you say, it's acceleration rather than top speed that's key around here.
And it's an interesting one because when you speak to some of the riders, they complain about the fact that you don't really have sixth gear around here. It's not about being at that top speed. Nobody complains about it at Jerez, and Jerez is a second to fifth gear circuit. So Balaton's probably going to be something similar to that, although Jerez obviously has a lot of character around it and a lot more of the faster corners as well, the fourth gear corners. But this is a place where you just need to have an all-round package that works, and that's what's quite interesting right now, because especially for us in the Superbike World Championship, whatever about in MotoGP with the prototype, this is a production-based championship. You want to have that bit of variety as well, and that's what you've got here. If you've got the all-round package, you can get good results.
And the other thing is you can't have, the history of Jerez and all the rest of it. Well, you can't have the history until you've been, can you? So, you know, we're here in Balaton Park. We'll have a couple of rounds here, and then we'll be talking about the classics we've had here in the same way as Most, and thankfully Most, you know, was able to deliver some brilliant races right from the get-go. So all these new venues, you know, they have their own quirks and charms, and I must say I've enjoyed the weekend so far, and the casual stroll in down from the hotel balcony in the morning straight to the circuit within 5 minutes is certainly a big attraction as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, when you look at the track in a turn 15 and up towards the last corner, there's the hotel in the background, and it's quite cool to be able to see a circuit that's taken that initiative to be able to do that, to make this into a resort. And Balaton, Lake Balaton is one of the holiday resorts for Hungary, and it's nice to be able to have a track so close to it. And the setting here for the circuit as well, we're in the middle of the field, so there's massive sunflower fields all the way around the circuit, and it just looks a little bit different. It's kind of like Cremona insofar as you've got the fields either side of the circuit, but we've got the motorway that's only a kilometre away. Budapest Airport was a 70-minute drive away, so everything about here is quite convenient if in the future, for whether it's Superbikes or MotoGP, fans want to come to see the races. It's actually going to be one that should be able to build a pretty big audience pretty quickly.
What a romantic picture he paints with the sunflowers and so on. I'm happy enough that it's close to the motorway, close to the airport, and do you know what, close to the tourist destination as well. Different type of tourist holiday to say Misano or Portimao. It's a more relaxed vibe. It's a water sports or a casual lake experience type trip. But yeah, plenty of attraction here at Balaton Park. We better get back to free practice 1 for a minute. 10 minutes to go. Toprak Razgatlioglu into the 1 minute 39. It's 1:39.745. So 3/4 of a second faster than Andrea Iannone. Danilo Petrucci also within a second of him, has just posted consecutive personal bests. Sven Blusch just making his way round on an installation lap now, and then Alvaro Bautista is 5th fastest as things stand. So the early indication, Steve, we've got 5 Ducatis in the top 6. Unsurprisingly, Ducati going well as always.
Yeah, Ducati obviously it's the best all-round bike, and whatever way anyone wants to skin it, this is the bike that is able to get the easiest results at every track we go to. And when the bike works well, it works very well. And I thought that was where someone like Ryan Vickers last time out was really interesting, because obviously he knows Donington really well from his time racing in the British Championship, but we were able to see the high marks of what he is capable of on that Motocorsa bike. And with the Ducati, you can perform like that. He's doing a decent job here so far this weekend. He's only a 1/10 of a second down on Montella, so the 2 rookies pretty closely matched.
Yeah, and when we think about Ducati, and particularly when we look ahead to the seasons to come, obviously at the moment all of their eggs are in Nicolo Bulliger's basket. That's very clear, because they're willing to let Alvaro Bautista go, even though he'd be the common sense second rider for the factory team next season. He would be the rider most likely to give them a title if things go wrong for Bulliger, or if he can't adapt to the new bike. There might be a chance that Bautista does, in the same way that he did in 2019. So they're setting out their stall in a slightly different way. They're thinking about who will be the rider who is able to take over from Nicolo Bulliger. A little bit of succession planning going on at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's the way that you have to look at it, because when we've talked so much about Toprak over the years and his move to MotoGP, what Bulliger's been able to do in the Ducati has shown that he's a cut above the likes of Bautista, a very established Grand Prix rider in the past. So we're able to make a comparison between him and some of the other Ducati riders. He'll know the Pirelli tyres, so you wouldn't be surprised whenever he does the test next year that he's able to perform well and could potentially be on a MotoGP bike. That also shows young riders that if you come here and you take that chance, you can be a MotoGP rider. And someone like Aaron Cannett's probably the best example of that, because with the best will in the world, Aaron's not going to be a MotoGP rider in a year's time or 2 years' time or 3 years' time without taking a risk, because he's already shown in the past how good of a Moto2 rider he is, but he's now the benchmark in Moto2 for other riders to beat to get their chance to be a MotoGP rider. And for Aaron, he can stay in Moto2, and you wouldn't be surprised if he does that, or he can come to World Superbikes and he could be Petrucci's teammate potentially. Obviously, Sven Blusch has said that they haven't even started to talk to riders, it seemed. But for BMW, if you can have Petrucci and Canet, it makes a lot of sense. But if you're Aaron Canet and you can replace Bulliger in a year's time as Ducati's team leader, then you're thinking, that's the real seat that I wanted. He might have to back himself for a year of a lower wage, but good results, and then potentially give yourself the chance to be a factory Ducati rider going forward, and maybe even get that opportunity to be a MotoGP rider.
Yeah, the key, as you say, is betting on yourself, because it's a tough task to go up against Nicolo Bulliger in the form he's in, and with the team all around him, you know, Italian rider for Italian manufacturer and team and so on. But the rewards could be high if Bulliger does go and move on, as you said, the following year to MotoGP.
And it's interesting as well, because I remember speaking to Jonathan Ray in 2014, whenever he was on the Honda, and he had the option to stay on Honda and earn more money than going to Kawasaki. And a little bit like Cal Crutchlow, when Cal decided to leave World Superbikes and go to MotoGP, both of those guys backed themselves for a lower rate wage the next year in the hope that they could really turn it into something. Ray obviously turned it into, I'm the man here at Kawasaki, 6 world championships, all those race victories, and a lot of money for him. Cal did the same in MotoGP and earned well. If you're at that level and you back yourself, it can work out really well for you. And I'd love to see it where someone like kind of backs himself, and we see him on the Ducati and we see what he can do, because he is a really good rider, and he'd be a good addition for our championship on a good bike at the front of the field.
Certainly a seller's market as far as Ducati are concerned, because they have all the cards in their pocket. They have the best independent bikes, the top performing bike in the championship. They often lock out a lot of the top positions, certainly discarding Toprak, and he's moving away next season. So you know, they have all of the aces and all of the reasons that, and that's the reason that ultimately Jonathan Ray puts himself in the market, because you wouldn't have expected him to be discussed in and linked to an independent team in the past.
Well, that's the thing. If you're Jonathan Rea and you look at the situation right now, we've already had it where all the riders have come in. They've done one run at the start of this session. Their data is already being uploaded to the Ducati servers in Bologna, where all the independent teams are able to look at it and see what settings were in Bautista's bike, how was he riding, what was this, blah, blah, blah. All the information that they're able to find out 15 minutes into free practice 1 from his first run is available to them. By the end of today, they've got it where they're able to look at what tyres was everyone on during the course of their runs, how many laps did they do on the X tyre, how many laps did they do on the Zero. You've got so much information, and information is power in racing. Ducati has shown that time and again. That's why they're so competitive across the board in MotoGP and Superbikes. It's because that data and information is pooled. And fair enough, the factory team has better resources or better engineers and different advantages. But all of the independent teams, if you pay the money, can have the same potential. And that's what makes it quite interesting right now. And obviously, it doesn't mean that it's a guarantee for it all to work. Look at Scott Redding and the Bonovo team. You still need the resources to be able to make it work and the right personnel, but you can make it happen.
Yeah, there is something tricky there, isn't there, for Ducati? Because Ione's had the same problem this season as Redding by and large. A top 10 has been a good result for him, and last season he looked like he was ready to then make a step forward this year and be a challenger, but instead he's gone largely backwards, you'd have to say, other than Phillip Island.
Yeah, and a little bit like Scott Redding as well. I think that motivation and more than anything disillusionment has probably been a big factor, and it's always tricky when you're a rider like Redding or Iannone and you're having to bring that budget to a team. It's very difficult because you're used to being the man, you're used to being a factory rider that's been well looked after during your career, and instead you're bringing that budget and the results aren't there, and you feel, have I gotten value for what I put into this project? Iannone clearly hasn't had that benefit over the last year. Scott Redding decided that he would prefer to go to BSB rather than continue in that vein, and it's very difficult to blame those riders for that decision. It's also one of those things where they made their agreement to bring that money to the team. They knew what they were getting themselves into, but you always move to any situation with the belief that it's going to work, and then very quickly you find out that there's a difference between that belief and what will actually happen out on track. Yeah,
and there was an air of inevitability, wasn't it? Because Scott had been talking in the press about how he knew that the reality was his future was in the British Championship, because there were few rides available here that were well paying enough and so on, and that didn't require him to bring budget. And he's not in a position in life as much as career where he wants to be paying to race, and I think that's comprehensible as well for a rider who's been in the Grand Prix, who's been a race winner in World SBK and a championship challenger, and not too many years ago either. So not a surprise that he moves on, and therefore by extension, and hearing Scott's comments about Andrea Iannone being in a similar situation in the press, by extension it wouldn't be too much of a surprise if Iannone looked elsewhere for his future as well. I think for someone like Redding as well, it's very easy to forget he's been on the road for 20 years. You think back to his career as a junior rider in the Spanish Championship, CEV as it was. He made the move to Spain when he was 11 or 12. It's been 20 years where he's been living out of that world. Now he has the chance to go and live out of his own house and have a much easier life racing in BSB. I think he's got to the stage of his career where he understands that that's probably more important for him. And he gets... That's the Jari Montella, the first crash that we've had down. It looks like it's in and around turn 2, I'd say, at the start of the lap for Jari Montella there. And you'd imagine that it's a fairly slow speed spill there for Montella. Not too much damage done to the bike. The wing's been knocked off there on the left-hand side, as you'd expect. But yeah, Jari just losing it through there, and not too much damage on, but that'll be the end of his session. But just to go back to Scott, one of those situations where he's been able to see that maybe now he makes the decisions for what he wants to do and what he enjoys doing, and racing in Britain is more enjoyable for him because of the advantage of being at home more, and looks like he'll do a little bit of road racing as well at Northwest 200 and give himself a chance to try lots of new things. And it's interesting to see that he's at the stage of his career where that's more important to him than the chance of being in the World Championship. Well, new fastest lap of this free practice 1 session with just over 30 seconds to go from Toprak Razgatlioglu, a 1 minute 39.743, putting him 0.4 of a second faster than anyone else has yet gone here at the Balaton Park circuit. Sam Lowe second, Andrea Iannone third, Bautista and Nicolo Bulliger rounding out your top 5. Obviously, yellow flag still out Jari Montella just crawling away and out of the way now, so the yellow flag has been withdrawn, but this is the final lap anyway with the checkered flag about to fall.
Yeah, it's also one of those there for Jari. He'll lose out on the information of the practice start, and probably not too critical at this stage of the weekend. But again, it's another little bit of that data point for Montella that late crash costs you that little bit of information.
Yes, he has remounted, just riding around at the moment. As you say, checkered flag has fallen, so it will be Razgatlioglu who tops the timesheets in the first ever session here at the Balaton Park circuit. 0.4 of a second ahead of Sam Lowe's. Andre Iannone has seen the checkered flag now. Third fastest, Bautista Bulliger rounding out your top 5. He just made his way out at the end to get a practice start himself. Rest of the top 10, Petrucci, Alex Lowe's, Nicolo Canepa, Garrett Gerloff and Ryan Vickers. So good to see Gerloff and Vickers carrying on a bit of their performance from Donington Park last time out up in the top 10.
Yeah, and again, it shows that the Ducati able to work well for Vickers right from the start, but that's important for Gerloff to be able to show something there. And Iker Lecuona up inside the top 10. Javi Vieira was actually the fastest in the 4th sector as well. Vieira a little bit further down the order, but at least for Honda, a little bit more encouragement already this weekend than they had over the course of the Donington weekend.
Yes, so as always, in a couple of moments we'll take you through your 3-2-1. Very early days here at Balaton Park, but third fastest Andre Iannone, the yellow Go 11 bike, you can see there the number 29. Sam Lowe's second fastest on the number 14, and Toprak Razgatlioglu already back in the pits. He was fastest in free practice 1. Early to read anything into it, but as we said during that session, Sam Lowe's second, Iannone third, Bautista 4th, Bulliger 5th, Petrucci 6th, and then not too far back you find Vickers and Montella as well. So good start to the weekend for Ducati.
Yeah, and we'd see there for Sam just doing his practice start and didn't make a good start from that, but that's important for the team as well to be able just to take that feedback from it. The important thing for everyone is to be able to come back in now, see what you think of how the bike felt out there, what you were able to do on your different runs. You can see for Toprak there, decent length run for his second stint and his first stint of 7 laps as well. So for Razgatlioglu, good information gained in this session. Bulliger ended up doing 20 laps, so one of the busier riders. Jonathan Ray with 22, so everyone was keen to get as many laps in as they could during this session.
Yes. Sam Lowe's in second. Look at all of those Ducati. Second down to 6th place. Lowe's, Iannone, Bautista, Bulliger, Petrucci. And then next manufacturer of the motor, P7 for Alex Lowe's, Honda P8 for Iker Lecuona, Kawasaki P9 for Garrett Gerloff.